Good morning and welcome to WBC Faster Together, the LinkedIn Live series of the Women Business Collaborative. I'm your co host, Linda Peak Schacht, Advisory Council Champion at WBC. Gwen Young, the CEO of WBC, is traveling today. A special treat for me and for you today is the very first public interview with Leslie Lautenslager to discuss her new book, My Time with General Powell, Stories of Kindness, Diplomacy, and Protocol. But first, some background for those of you who are new to WBC. WBC is an unprecedented alliance of over 80 women business organizations and hundreds of business leaders building a movement to achieve equal position, pay, and power for all women in business. Through collaboration, advocacy, action, and accountability, we are mobilizing thousands to create momentum and accelerate the pace of change. We live our commitment to DEI through our staff, our board of directors, and advisory council that include more than 34% people of color. Through our 9 action initiatives and DEI goals, we aim to bring about change and in the business landscape. So check out the chat for the 9 initiatives and join our movement at wbccollaborative.org, where you will also find our recently released Pay Equity Playbook. Each week in this series, we try to offer different ways to advocate change and accelerate impact. We present data, research, and best practices. We lift up the power of women's voices for change, and we show the importance of cross-generational collaboration and the allyship of men in the movement. So let's get started with this amazing woman, Leslie Lautenslager, and today's conversation. Leslie's career spans decades of public service, where she oversaw ceremonies and special events for world leaders, including national commemorations, the annual opening of the United Nations General Assembly. She served as Assistant Chief of Protocol for ceremonials and Special Assistant to Secretary of State Colin Powell, responsible for a staff tasked with planning and organizing all functions hosted by the Secretary for foreign dignitaries. And now, on the second anniversary of his passing, Leslie has pulled back the curtain on the human side of General Powell, and she has shared a narrative in a book I urge all of you to buy, showing us the personal side of the man she came to love. Leslie, welcome, and thank you for giving us your first public interview on this book.
Linda, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, same here. Your career has given you a ringside seat to some of the most consequential events of our time with one of its most consequential players. But this isn't really a book about that. It's about what you learned in your time with General Powell and a very intimate look at the man most of us have respected just from afar. How did you decide to write the book? And we should note you did it with the blessing of his family.
Thank you. It's funny, about 2 years before General Powell died, he would tease me like, Leslie, you got to write a book. And I would get in my little protocol high horse and I'd say, yes, sir, I'm going to write a book one day. It'll be about protocol. And he would exaggerate a yawn and he would roll his eyes dramatically and he would say, Leslie, and he'd give me this, fatherly look like, Leslie, you got to write about me. You want to sell, don't you? So I still would insist, no, I will never write about you, sir. And then, of course, his death, and it was devastating for those of us close to him and loved him. But by about a year, the first year was truly a year of grieving. But by the end of that year, I actually felt almost a compulsion that if I didn't share the man that I knew so well and that I loved so well with people who didn't know him, how unforgivably inexcusable that would be and how tremendously selfish. So it became almost a mission. It became almost like a spark. And that's how I was able to come full circle and hear his voice in my head. Leslie, you got to write about me. You want to sell, don't you?
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. You know, the themes of the book are in the subtitle: stories of kindness, diplomacy, and protocol. And throughout it all, you're giving us tips from the general on what made him so successful,
Mhm.
and personalizing that for us. And I'd like to start with where those first few days and months you started with him, and that is with the notion of love notes and his idea about beginning to shape the people who would work with him.
Well, thank you for that, because it was a less than ideal opening, I should say, because I was eager. I had accepted this job, and I was eager to represent everything well and efficiently, like all of us new to a job would be. And I would come into the office in the morning, and there on the fax machine. This is 1996, mind you. So this is long before we are texting and cell phones and everything else. So our communication was either by phone or in person or fax. I'd come into the office, and on the fax machine, I'd be thinking I'd have a lovely day. And on the fax machine would be a faxed note from General Powell that would say, to LL, me, from CP, Colin Powell, and RE regarding love note. And then he would go fill a page or 2 pages or 3 pages of all the things I had done wrong and all the things I would I should never do again going forward. So I came to hate these love notes. And I cringed every time I would see a love note on the fax. But sure enough, it was his way, and there was something that he certainly did in the military of training his new troops. And I was a new troop, um, in terms of how to become efficient in a job, lay the groundwork of expectations, make them strongly defined, and learn fast. And then once you have it under your belt, it's smooth sailing. Well, sort of.
I loved that lesson from him. There was another lesson that you talk about from your time at the State Department with him, and that is his notion of one team, one fight. Is there an example you can give us of that, of how he brought people together?
Well, he was always eager for you to express your opinion, and also for you to contribute to the body of information, or the body of the plan. And then once it was over, I mean, once it came to the decision making, and he actually, this was something he writes about in his books, "One Team, One Fight." And so it's cheating for me to claim it, because it's not mine at all. But everybody who ever knew him and everybody who ever worked for him knew that his philosophy was one team, one fight. We are all in this together, and it is our responsibility to move together as a team.
What, you know, just watching his career, we know that he did that. But now let's talk about kind of the travails and the joys of being an aide de camp to someone like General Powell. I love that you chose the code names that you used in hotels from his love of music. Can you tell us about his love of music and how you came about choosing code names for
Well,
him?
I mean, I think many people in the audience, you've heard of, celebrities when they go into hotels, they can't, be registered as Denzel Washington or Jane Fonda, and so oftentimes there's a code name. Well, I don't know. I don't know what his preference was prior to this, but why not get creative? And the first uh, code name we chose. I am a big musical theater fan, as is he, but I particularly love Gene Kelly. So I first named him Donald Lockwood, and that's Gene Kelly's character in Singing in the Rain. Well, about 2 days would go by, and suddenly he calls or faxes me in a love note saying, I don't feel like a Donald. I think I'm a Richard. So he became Richard Lockwood. And then and there's several others, and I go through it in the book quite a bit, but
Yeah.
the
Well,
one that we had at the point, up until his death, was um, was based on Dirty Dancing, because he loved Dirty Dancing. I love Dirty Dancing. We could do battle rounds of trying to outdo each other with the dialogue. And so, as tipping the hat to Patrick Swayze's character, Johnny, he was John, and tipping the hat to Baby. Jennifer Grey's character, Houseman. So he was John Houseman.
I love it. So, well, you have some little tips for aid to camps, and one I love, I want you to tell us about, is your notion of a spinach in the teeth versus a run in the stocking.
So the rule is, and this is for everybody, whether you're working with a person like General Powell or you are with your best friend at dinner, if it's something that can be changed, i.e., spinach in the teeth or lipstick on your teeth, it's a kindness to share it with the person because it's something that can be changed, something that can be fixed. Say it. If it's something that cannot be fixed, like a run in the stockings or mustard stain on a tie, again, a kindness to the person, don't call attention to it because suddenly then that person's going to be very awkward at trying to cover up something that cannot be switched or cannot be changed. And there's a funny story in the book that we were traveling, as we often did, in a private plane, and the sunshine came in at a certain angle, and I looked down and I could see that he had mismatched his jacket with a suit pants. It was just a subtle change in the weave. Now that's clearly something that is not the spinach in the teeth problem because he couldn't change it. But I had great fun just giggling about it. And he finally saw the expression on my face and realized I had caught it. And it was fine. Nobody else knew it. But it's one of the examples of can't call attention to it because unless you are handy to the mismatched suit jacket and pants, you're out of luck.
That's right. Well, kindness is in the theme. And do you have one example? I mean, you have thousands of examples in the book, but what's your favorite example of General Powell's showing kindness?
It's hard to pick one, but one that comes to mind, especially and especially in this day and age when there's such occasion of people public ugliness. And he was giving a speech at a university out in the Midwest. And as was always the case, he never wanted to know questions in advance. And he was always happy to take questions directly from an audience, no screening. Well, a typical university campus, you've got students who are gung-ho about issues and gung-ho about those issues or that issue. And the audience had loved the speech, and it was standing ovation, of course, and the leadership, the president of the university, the students, they all loved it. The community members loved it. Well, one young student had time with a microphone and went right into a political discourse and I legitimately do not remember what the issue was, but it was an issue that he felt very strongly about in opposition to General Powell's stance or his public stance or a headline he had made or an answer he had made. And the young man was just vehement and was just going really, getting red in the face. Well, then the audience turned on him. I mean, the audience just, the boos were outrageous and the audience was getting riled up and almost not violent, but so agitated, it was becoming very ugly. And the poor young man is beginning to shake. I mean, he's trembling. And General Powell, in his, and I always called his 4-star height, but with a calming that only he could have delivered from the stage, calmed the crowds and said, listen, please understand, I fought in uniform for all those decades to fight for everybody's right to speak. Let the young man speak. Let him express his opinion. Son, please go on. Please continue. So the general had lowered the temperature of the audience, but then raised the boy up. And the young man did not change his stance, which was fine. But the general was so kind because he really saved the young man. And I
And tied it back to his service to our country, right? What he had
Exactly.
fought for, his right
Exactly.
to speak. That I love that story. So let's extend that a little bit. We obviously live in very turbulent times. So what advice do you think General Powell would have to offer us now to navigate the national and global challenges and upheavals we face?
Well, I would never want to put words in his mouth, but I would firmly believe that he would be as frustrated as most of us are, and the unkindness of our public leaders in many cases in the public discourse. I mean, just we all could do better. We could all do better if we quit shouting at each other. We could all do better if we realize that social media may do great, wonderful things in many areas, but too often it's used for sound bites that can be taken out of context and they're used as ammunition, and that should never be. Ignore the talking heads. Okay, we're talking heads right now. I hope we're doing good and doing well, but keep in mind that the cable and whatnot, they're paid by market share. They're paid by advertising dollars. They're paid to follow what they say. What's the old saying of if it bleeds, it leads?
Yeah.
The more fisticuffs that are going on, the more ugliness that is shouted, the higher their market share ratings are. That's wrong.
Well, that reminds me of the phrase you have from General Powell in the book, and that is, they should know better.
They should know better. They should know better. Their mamas raised them better than that.
And you have a wonderful example of how he did not, he viewed people who thought too highly of themselves as not being helpful to the situation, right? Can you
Correct.
tell us the story of the prima donna at the
Okay.
Kennedy Center Honors?
But let me put a caveat to this. There's a chapter called "They Should Know Better," and
Yes.
in that chapter, I tell some ugly stories, and I'm telling the stories because they're either very funny or they show a good lesson to be learned. But I do not reveal the names because number one, I don't think it's ever kind, is never right to speak ill of somebody. But also, more importantly, my philosophy of that chapter, doing it that way, I also wanted everybody to be able to read it and be able to insert in their own life, in their own world, insert the name of, oh, I recognize somebody in my world who would acted out of turn or misbehaved. So I leave it up to the reader to be able to identify themselves in the story. So in this case, it was at the Kennedy Center Honors, which the public does not necessarily realize that the actual honors given for the Kennedy Center honorees, it's bestowed upon the honoree by the Secretary of State. And it's a lovely black tie occasion at the State Department. Well, in this case, and every year we have five, or for the most part, we have five honorees. In this case, there was one honoree who was late. And I kept calling the assistant and the Secretary of State and all four other honorees. I mean, that's the royalty of Hollywood in Broadway and in all of our theater arts. And I kept telling the assistant. Well, the assistant kept saying, "No, no, she wants to make an entrance. No, no, she's not ready. She's not coming. And finally, I went to the Secretary of State. I said, "Sir, she's not coming. She wants to make an entrance, but we are late. We need to. It's a long evening. It's a fabulous evening, but it's long, and we have a very, very specific, choreographed program for the evening set." So we decided that no, the show must go on. We are not waiting for the final honoree to arrive to at the detriment of everybody else's enjoyment. So we go ahead and we let everybody get seated. And the assistant had finally told me, at the final straw that broke the camel's back, the assistant told me she wants to come so that you can make an announcement. Have everybody seated already? You can make an announcement so that everybody can stand and give her the recognition she deserves. So I whispered to the secretary, and he said, "I don't think we should wait," and I agreed. I mean, it's not my decision to make, but he basically said what my thought was. So we carried on. We sat everybody. It was at the point we'd already finished first course. The wait staff was ready to clear the table for the second course. She finally arrived, and I did as I would do for any latecomer coming to any official event, seated her quietly. But I made sure not to make eye contact because she was glaring at me. But I did everything right. I appropriately, gracefully, and generously escorted her in. But we did not make the to
Yeah.
do that she wished.
She
But
should know
we
better,
didn't want,
right?
didn't
She
want to.
should know better is what the
Right,
general would
right,
say.
right, 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 and we
Uh,
didn't want to affect everybody else's enjoyment of the evening.
Exactly, exactly. Well, we're going into gift season here, and I've got a couple of more questions, but I have to ask you this as a chief of protocol, as someone who was responsible for the gifts that the Secretary of State would exchange with foreign leaders. You have a wonderful chapter about gift giving. Can you just give us one or two short tips as we move into gift giving season here?
That, yes, it's a fun one. I think it's always important to remember. Take somebody like General Powell. It could be General Powell. It could be any celebrity. It could be any CEO. It could be any big boy or big girl who has been in a notable position for a very long time. No matter how wonderful you think the crystal bowl is that you want to bestow on this wonderful person, keep in mind that that wonderful person probably has 12 fabulous crystal engraved bowls. How many crystal engraved bowls does any one person really need? How many dust catchers? No matter how beautiful the Steuben or the whatever sculpture is, how many does any one person really need? So he would always say, please tell people I don't need anything. I appreciate the gesture. I appreciate the idea, but I do not need something. So I would often talking with a client say, please, something symbolic, a pen, maybe a pen if needed, or when we go to universities, God bless them. They want to be so generous, which is great, but money is always something you should be very conscientious about at a university. So I want to say, no, 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 do something, plant a tree or do something with your own resources, maybe in his name, honoring him and his his event, but do it to benefit your students.
I
And
love that idea, and I recommend that chapter to everyone. So, at WBC, our mission is to advance equal position, pay, and power for women in business. So, let me ask you, what are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned? What sticks out to you in terms of tips that you would give young women starting out in their career and as they move through their career?
my best advice is, well, the best thing I can say is actually I'm a horrible example of of knowing what to do, because and the reason I said that the in absolutely 100% my whole career, the best jobs, the best career decisions I ever made were opportunities that fell in my lap. Never, ever, ever was it my experience that my pounding on a door, the job interview that I thought I wanted, or a job interview that, oh, please, hire me. I never, ever had success with that. Never. I'm the perfect example of being at the right place at the right time and taking guidance and love from friends of friends.
That's great, and being ready to walk through that door when it opens for you, right? Uh,
Absolutely, and embrace all your experiences, because we're all a patchwork quilt of our experiences. So something that you do right out of college, and you have no idea what your path is going to be. Whatever's happened to you right now, you will build on it. So have faith. Stand up tall, shoulders back, and take the next step. And one of my first bosses out of college had great advice, and she said, never, number one, never say no to a job you've never been offered. So in your mind, you think, well, I don't want that. Well, if you've not been offered it, how do you know? You can always say no, but always realize, no matter how great you think the job is that you have right now, always be willing to consider something that falls in your lap.
uh,
You owe it to yourself to just listen. It may do nothing more than to reinforce in you that no, you're right where you need to be. So then say no. But it may come out of the blue, something you never knew about. I didn't know about protocol. I didn't even know what protocol was when it fell in my lap. 1980s.
And yet you became one of the most eminent practitioners of protocol. Let me close by asking you two things. One is the most exciting experience that you had, and then second, what do you think General Powell's call to action would be today?
Well, it's very hard to say most exciting experience. I don't even know that I have an answer to that.
We'll tell people to read the book.
Read the book.
There are
And
lots of
then
exciting experiences there. And so, General Powell, I have to say, General Powell, the song and dance man, I would probably say, bring some joy into your life. So can you tell us a little bit about how he matched that commitment to duty with a joy of living, and send us out with that?
Okay, send us out, meaning you're absolutely right. His commitment to duty, but keep in mind that duty is not one thing. We all have a commitment to duty for whatever our paid or volunteer position is, our paid responsibility, whatever it is that you think is your job, whether it's volunteer or if you're managing a home or whatever that is. Yes, you have a duty to that, but you also have a duty to your family. You have a duty to your friends, and you have a duty to yourself. Be true to yourself. Be true to all who have come before you. Spread the joy, spread the responsibility, and know that there are people following you and watching you. And even more than what you say, it's what you do. And know that you have the ability to have a good impact.
That's great. And I recommend the book highly. You've got in the link how to get it from Amazon. You will see in there all sides of General Powell, including photographs of him with a lightsaber in the bunker where he and Leslie did so much work, and also how to find him on YouTube as a song and dance band. So, Leslie, thank you for sharing your insights today. We're very grateful for your support and the support of all of our partners as we try to bring weekly a valuable resource to all of the women and others who watch us. We invite you to wbcollaborative.org to learn more about our initiatives to increase women in the C-suite and the boardroom, to address underrepresentation of women in industries, and to increase more women business owners, and to advance a pipeline of women leaders to bring gender and pay parity and diversity, equity, inclusion to the business landscape. So please join us weekly to keep up to date on our next guest, and watch us as we create a movement for gender parity in business. You can follow us on social media at WB Collaborative on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And that's all for today. Please come back next Thursday.